The cutting wind of Portland seemed sharper that July afternoon. Emily Matthews pulled her coat tighter around her body as she walked aimlessly through the downtown streets, each step heavy, as if she carried the weight of the world on her shoulders. The grey sky above perfectly reflected the turmoil forming within her. She had just left another failed job interview, the 5th in 2 weeks since her dismissal from Hope Medical Center. "We'll review your resume and get back to you," said the recruiter with that same evasive look Emily knew all too well. It was the look of someone who knew more than they were saying. The look of someone who had probably heard about the receptionist who sued her own company. While waiting at the bus stop, Emily checked her phone. A message from Mrs. Thompson, her neighbor. "Your mother is fine. Took her medications on time. Don't worry." Emily took a deep breath. At least that. Since Martha, her mother, had worsened after medication errors at Hope Medical Center, Emily divided her time between looking for work and caring for her. Now she depended on the kindness of neighbors for times when she needed to go out. The bus was taking forever. The light rain began to fall, quickly turning into a merciless downpour. Emily ran to take shelter under the awning of a closed cafe. She rubbed her frozen hands, trying to regain some warmth. That's when she saw them. Leaning against the wall, a man and a little girl huddled under a single coat, too big for the child and too small for both of them. The girl, approximately 8 years old, had a face reddened by the cold, her eyes fixed on the wet ground. The man, unshaven and with tired eyes, kept his arm protectively around the small figure. They had no backpacks or bags. They didn't seem to be waiting for anyone. They were simply there, trying to protect themselves from the rain falling mercilessly. Emily observed people passing by hurriedly, some casting quick glances, but no one stopping. It was as if those two were invisible. And for an instant, Emily felt a deep connection with that invisibility. "Are you okay?" The words left her mouth before she could think too much. The man raised his eyes, surprised that someone had noticed their existence. "We're just waiting for the rain to pass," he answered with dignity, despite the circumstances. The girl looked at Emily with large, curious eyes. There was something in that look, a mixture of innocence and precocious maturity, that hit Emily like a punch to the stomach. "Daddy, I'm cold," the little one whispered, trying not to appear fragile. Emily observed the two for a few seconds. She knew she shouldn't. She wasn't in a position to help. She was unemployed, with bills piling up and a sick mother to care for. But her mother's words echoed in her mind. When we can still help, even without having much, that's when help matters most. "Look, I live nearby," Emily heard herself saying. "If you want, you can come with me until the rain stops. I have hot coffee." The man hesitated, his face a mixture of distrust and need. "We don't want to be a bother," he said. But Emily noticed his eyes evaluating the proposal, thinking of his freezing daughter by his side. "It's no bother. It's just a helping hand." Something in Emily's tone must have sounded sincere enough because, after exchanging a look with the girl, he nodded. "I'm Richard," he introduced himself, extending his hand. "And this is my daughter, Lily." "Emily," she replied, briefly shaking the man's cold hand. "My apartment is 3 blocks from here." Along the way, Emily discovered little about the two. Richard spoke politely but was reserved. He mentioned only that they were passing through Portland, without going into details. Lily followed in silence, observing everything with attentive eyes. Emily's small apartment in the Richmond neighborhood wasn't luxurious, but it was cozy. Family photos in simple frames, a collection of refrigerator magnets from various cities, books stacked on improvised shelves, and the smell of dried herbs hanging in the kitchen gave the place a welcoming personality. "Make yourselves at home. I'll prepare something warm to drink," Emily said, turning on the heater. While heating milk for hot chocolate, Emily sent a message to Mrs. Thompson explaining that she had visitors and asking if she could stay a bit longer with Martha. The response came quickly. "Of course, dear, don't worry." Lily, initially shy, began to wander around the apartment with growing curiosity. Her eyes stopped on a box of colored pencils on the shelf. "Can I draw?" she asked in a low voice. Emily smiled. "Of course you can. There should be paper in the second drawer of that desk." While Lily entertained herself with drawings, Richard accepted the cup of hot chocolate that Emily offered, holding it with both hands as if it were a treasure. "Thank you," he said, the steam rising between them. "Not just for the chocolate, but for this, for taking us in." Emily sat in the armchair across from him. "May I ask what you were doing out there? You and your daughter?" Richard took a long sip before answering. "It's complicated. We're between places, let's say." Emily didn't push. She knew well the value of privacy, of secrets we keep to protect our dignity. The conversation flowed to lighter topics. Richard revealed he had a degree in business administration, but didn't talk about his current work. Emily told about her previous job as a receptionist, omitting the painful details of her dismissal. The night advanced. Emily improvised a dinner with what she had in the refrigerator, a vegetable soup with pasta that surprisingly served 3 people. Lily, now more at ease, told stories about her imaginary cat named Popcorn and proudly showed the drawings she had made. "This is for you," she said, handing over a paper where she had drawn what appeared to be Emily with voluminous brown hair, holding what looked like a green heart. Next to her were Lily and Richard, all smiling. "It's beautiful, Lily." "Thank you," Emily replied, genuinely touched. When bedtime came, Emily offered her bed to Lily, while she and Richard would settle in the living room, she on the sofa bed and he on the 2-seater sofa. "Just for one night," Richard insisted. "Tomorrow morning we'll continue on our way." Emily nodded but couldn't help wondering where they would go, a question that remained unanswered as the night's silence enveloped the small apartment, where 3 strangers, united by chance, tried to find a moment of peace amid their own storms. In the bedroom, Lily slept peacefully. In the living room, Richard looked out the window at the illuminated city, and Emily, lying on the sofa bed, reflected on how, even when everything seemed to be falling apart in her life, she still had enough to share. Perhaps that was what her mother had always tried to teach her, that true wealth lies in what we can give when we think we have nothing. With that thought, she fell asleep, not imagining that that simple act of kindness would forever change the course of her life. If this story interested you, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and give a like. Tell us what city you're watching from. We'll continue. Emily woke to the sound of rain still hitting the window. For a moment, she was confused to find herself on the sofa bed, until memories of the previous night returned like flashes. The strangers in the street, the impulsive invitation, the shared soup. She sat up with a start, looking around. The living room was impeccably tidy. The sofa where Richard had slept had perfectly aligned pillows, the blanket folded over the backrest. In the kitchen, the cups from the night before were washed and dried on the dish rack. "Richard? Lily?" she called, walking down the hallway to the bedroom where the girl had slept. The bed was made with no sign of the previous night's occupant. On the nightstand, Emily found the drawing Lily had made, she, Richard, and the girl holding hands, with the green heart in the center. Emily picked up the paper, feeling a strange mixture of relief and disappointment. Had they left without saying goodbye to avoid awkwardness? Or was it because they were in a hurry? A folded note fell from the drawing. In firm, elegant handwriting, it read, "Thank you for your kindness in a difficult moment. People like you make a difference. R." Just that. No last name, no phone number, no address. Just a simple and sincere thank you. Emily sighed, storing the note with the drawing in her document drawer. That brief encounter now seemed like a strange dream, almost unreal. Maybe it was better this way, each going their own way, carrying only the memory of a moment of kindness. The phone rang, pulling her from her thoughts. "Hello, Emily? This is Fabiana from Santa Monica Clinic. We received your resume and would like to schedule an interview for tomorrow at 2 p.m. Would that be possible?" Emily felt her heart race. It was the first positive response since she had started distributing resumes. "Yes, of course. They'll be there without fail." After hanging up, she ran to Martha's room to share the news. She found her mother sitting in the armchair by the window, watching the rain fall. "Mom, I got an interview at Santa Monica Clinic. It's a smaller place, but they say the environment is great, and the salary would cover your medications and—" "Who were those people who were here yesterday?" Martha interrupted, looking at Emily with that sharp intuition that neither age nor illness had diminished. Emily hesitated. "How did you know?" "Thompson told me you had visitors, and I found a small pink hair clip in the bathroom. You haven't used hair clips since you were 12. Martha smiled. Emily sat on the edge of the bed. "It was a man and a girl I found in the rain. They seemed to need help, so I offered shelter for a night." Martha studied her daughter's face. "You have a good heart, Emily, just like your father." She paused, taking her daughter's hand. "But you have to be careful too. The world doesn't always return kindness." "I know, Mom, but they're already gone. I'll probably never see them again." Emily didn't tell about the interview with the Human Resources Director at Santa Monica Clinic, which began promisingly and ended with the same evasive look she knew well. "Your resume is impressive, Emily, but—" The woman cleared her throat, uncomfortable. "I received a call from Hope Medical Center. Something about a labor lawsuit. A complaint." "It was a complaint of medical negligence," Emily corrected, feeling her face heat up. "My mother was a patient there and received the wrong medication 3 times. The last time we almost—" Her voice failed. "We almost lost her. I just did what any daughter would do." The director nodded, without really looking Emily in the eyes. "I understand, but you understand that this puts us in a delicate position. Hiring someone who reported their previous employer might seem problematic for our medical team." Emily left the interview feeling as if she carried an invisible weight, a mark that everyone could see except her. At the bus stop, she absently observed a large billboard being installed across the street. It was a new campaign for Hope Medical Center, "We Care with Heart." That's when the shock hit her. In the center of the billboard was a stylized but unmistakable image, 3 figures holding hands, with a large green heart between them, exactly like Lily's drawing. Emily hurriedly crossed the street, nearly being hit by a car. She stopped in front of the billboard, her heart beating erratically. It couldn't be a coincidence. It was the same drawing, the same lines, even the position of the figures was identical. The only difference was that in the billboard version, the figures had no defined faces. They were just silhouettes. "Impossible," she murmured to herself. 2 days later, Emily received an anonymous email. The sender used a generic address, but the content was direct. "Emily, I worked with you at Hope. Your dismissal was planned from the moment you filed the first complaint about your mother's treatment. The tardiness was just a convenient excuse. Be careful with your next steps. Not all who smile are friends." The email wasn't signed. Emily reread it several times, trying to identify who might have sent it. Sandra from accounting? Mauricio from the pharmacy? Perhaps Renata, who was always kind to her? Even more disturbing was discovering, when accessing the Hope Medical Center website to check the status of her mother's case, that there was a complete overhaul in the administration. The clinic had a new CEO, who promised a new era of humanized care and medical responsibility. The text was accompanied by an institutional photo, and there he was, the same man who had slept on her sofa, the same one who had left without goodbyes. His name printed below the photo, Richard Sullivan, new Executive Director of Hope Medical Center. Next to him, wearing a formal blue dress, was Lily, smiling shyly at the camera. Emily sat down, feeling her legs weaken. It wasn't Richard. It was Richard Sullivan. And they weren't passing through Portland. He now ran the company that had fired her, the same one that had neglected her mother's treatment. Her phone rang, making her jump. Unknown number. "Hello? Ms. Emily Matthews," a formal female voice. "This is from the office of the Director of Hope Medical Center. Dr. Richard Sullivan would like to schedule a meeting with you tomorrow at 10 a.m. Would that be possible?" Emily felt her throat dry up. "What about?" "He didn't specify, miss. He just said it's a matter of mutual interest and quite urgent." Emily hesitated, her brain working at full speed. Was it a trap? A way to pressure her to withdraw the lawsuit? Or did Richard, not just Richard, want to explain the strange encounter and his sudden appearance as CEO? "I'll be there," she finally replied. After hanging up, Emily picked up Lily's drawing again, now with different eyes. The green heart, the 3 figures holding hands. The same drawing now displayed on billboards throughout the city. What was the connection? Why would a man who would become CEO of a clinic be on the street, seemingly helpless, with his daughter? And why did they choose precisely her to help? Nothing made sense. But Emily was sure of one thing: it was no longer a simple coincidence. There was something bigger happening, something that connected that rainy night, her dismissal, her mother's case, and the clinic's new administration. And tomorrow, face to face with Richard Sullivan, she would discover exactly what it was. That night, Emily could barely sleep. She tossed in bed, reviewing the events of the past few weeks, trying to find connections, explanations. Why was Richard Sullivan, a clearly successful man, on the street with his daughter that night? Why did he accept help from a stranger? And more importantly, did he know who she was from the beginning? In the morning she wore her best outfit, black slacks and a navy blue blazer she saved for special occasions. She looked at herself in the mirror, nervously adjusting her hair. She didn't know if she was preparing for an interview, a confrontation, or a revelation. Perhaps it was all three. Hope Medical Center had always been imposing in Emily's eyes, but that morning, the glass and steel building seemed even more intimidating. She took a deep breath before passing through the automatic doors, adjusting her blazer for the 10th time. At the reception, some nurses recognized Emily and exchanged curious glances. She had worked there for almost 3 years. She knew every corridor, every room, every procedure. Now she felt like a stranger in familiar territory. "Emily Matthews to see Dr. Richard Sullivan," she announced to the receptionist, a young woman she didn't recognize. "Ah yes, 10th floor, last door on the right. The secretary is already waiting." The elevator rose slowly. Emily had never been to the 10th floor. It was the exclusive territory of the upper administration, a world apart from the bustle of the offices and corridors where she had worked. When the doors opened, she was greeted by a completely different environment. Walls in light grey tones, abstract paintings, well-maintained plants, and an almost reverential silence. The secretary, an elegant middle-aged woman, stood as she saw her. "Miss Matthews, please follow me. Dr. Sullivan is waiting." Emily was led down a hallway to a large, dark wood door. The secretary knocked softly before opening it. "Dr. Sullivan, Miss Matthews is here." Richard Sullivan was standing by the window, observing the city. He turned at the announcement, and Emily immediately recognized the man she had sheltered in her home. He looked different, clean-shaven, hair combed, wearing an impeccable suit, but it was undeniably him. "Emily," he said with a slight smile, dismissing the secretary with a gesture, "please come in, sit down." Emily remained standing by the door, studying the man before her. "I thought your name was Richard." Richard seemed genuinely embarrassed. "Yes, about that. I owe you explanations, many explanations." He indicated the leather armchairs by the center table. Emily hesitated, but finally sat down, maintaining an upright, defensive posture. "I'm listening." Richard sat across from her, leaning slightly forward. "First, I want to thank you again for your kindness that night. What you did, opening your home to 2 strangers, was extraordinary. What were you doing on the street with your daughter, Mr. Sullivan? Why did you lie about your name? And how exactly did you become CEO of the company that fired me after I reported medical negligence?" Richard sighed, running his hand through his hair in a gesture that Emily recognized from the night in her apartment. "It's a complicated story," he began. "That night I was returning from Seattle. My car broke down on the highway just as the storm started. I got a ride to downtown, but it was late. The hotels were full because of a medical conference. I tried to call a taxi, but with the rain—" "And why did you lie about your name?" Richard paused, carefully choosing his words. "For safety. A man alone with a child, accepting help from a stranger. It seemed prudent not to reveal my real identity. Richard is my name." Emily narrowed her eyes, not completely convinced. "And how did you go from a seemingly helpless man to CEO of Hope Medical Center in a matter of weeks?" "I had been negotiating the position for months. In fact, I was returning from a decisive meeting in Seattle when it all happened. The official announcement would be made the following week." He paused, studying Emily's expression. "I didn't know who you were that night, Emily. I only found out days later when I took the position and began reviewing pending cases and recent terminations." Emily felt a knot in her stomach. "And the drawing? Lily's drawing is now all over the city." Richard's face lit up with a genuine smile. "That was her idea. When we took over, Lily saw the drawing she had made for you among my things and said it would be perfect for the clinic's new campaign. She said it represented exactly what we wanted to convey: care, connection, humanity, without asking my permission, without even contacting me." Richard had the decency to look embarrassed. "You're right. We should have gotten in touch. But everything happened so fast with the transition, and to be honest, I didn't know how to approach you after discovering who you were and what had happened." Emily crossed her arms, keeping her guard up. And what exactly did you discover? Richard stood up, walking to a folder on the desk. He opened it, revealing a series of documents. I discovered that you were unjustly dismissed after raising legitimate concerns about your mother's treatment. I discovered that there was a systematic attempt to cover up serious medical errors. And I discovered that some people in the old administration believed that silencing problematic employees was easier than correcting real problems. Emily felt her heart race. Hearing that from the new CEO was surreal, a validation she never expected to receive. Why did you call me here today? Richard took a deep breath before answering. 3 reasons. First, to personally apologize for what happened to you and your mother. The way you were treated is unacceptable and does not reflect the values I want to implement here. He paused, observing Emily's reaction. Second, to inform you that your mother's case is being completely reassessed by our new medical team. I've already identified those responsible for the errors and taken appropriate measures. Emily felt her throat tighten. And the third reason? Richard smiled slightly. To offer your job back, not as a receptionist, but as coordinator of our new patient experience department. I believe that someone who cared enough to report errors, even knowing they might lose their job, is exactly the kind of person we need to ensure our patients receive the best possible care. Emily blinked, astonished. Of all the possibilities she had imagined for that meeting, this certainly wasn't among them. Why would I trust you? The question hung in the air between them. Richard didn't answer immediately, seeming to seriously ponder the question. You have no reason to trust me, Emily. Not yet. I entered your life under false pretenses, even if not intentionally, and I represent an institution that deeply hurt you. He paused. But I'm asking for a chance to show that Hope Medical Center can be what its name promises, and that people like you, who have the courage to speak up when something is wrong, deserve to be heard and valued. Emily looked out the window, observing the city stretching below. Her mind worked at full speed, weighing risks, considering possibilities. I need to think, she finally said. Of course, take all the time you need. Richard extended a card. My personal number. When you have an answer, you can call me directly. Emily took the card, still hesitant. As she rose to leave, Richard stopped her with a question. Why did you help us that night, Emily? You didn't know us. We could have been anyone. Emily reflected for a moment before answering. My mother always said that when we can still help even having little, that's when help matters most. She shrugged. Besides, we all need help at some point. Even future CEOs, apparently. Richard smiled. A smile that reached his eyes. Lily asks about you, you know. She really liked your apartment. Said it smelled like cinnamon and books. Emily couldn't help a small smile. She's a special child. Yes, she is. Richard hesitated before adding, she lost her mother 2 years ago. Cancer. Since then, it's been just the two of us. The comment caught Emily by surprise, a personal fragment amid the formality of the conversation. For a moment, she saw again the vulnerable man from that rainy night, not the confident executive before her. I'm sorry, she said sincerely. Richard nodded in gratitude. I hope to hear from you soon, Emily. As she left the Hope Medical Center building, Emily felt as if she had just emerged from a strange and intense dream. Richard's proposal was tempting, not just for the financial security she so desperately needed, but for the opportunity to really make a difference, to ensure that what had happened to her mother wouldn't happen to other patients. But could she trust him, the institution, or was she just being manipulated in some way she didn't yet understand? Emily passed by the plaza in front of the clinic, sitting on a bench to organize her thoughts. That's when she noticed across the street a man taking photos. She wouldn't have paid attention, except for the fact that the camera seemed pointed in her direction. When their eyes met, the man hurriedly put away his equipment and disappeared into the crowd, leaving Emily with a new and disturbing question. Was she being watched? And if so, why? And by whom? 3 weeks had passed since the meeting with Richard Sullivan. Emily had finally accepted the proposal, not without reservations, but driven by necessity and a curiosity she couldn't ignore. Her new position as patient experience coordinator gave her access to information she could only speculate about before, including the complete details about what had really happened to her mother. Emily's new office was on the 8th floor, with a partial view of the Japanese gardens. A gold plaque with her name on the door still seemed surreal each time she entered. Inside, a light wood desk, state-of-the-art computer, and a small meeting table composed the professional environment she never imagined occupying. That morning, Emily was reviewing the new medication administration protocols she had proposed when soft knocks on the door interrupted her concentration. "Come in." Maria Foster, the new Human Resources Director, entered with a folder in her hands and a serious expression on her face. "Emily, can we talk?" Emily indicated the chair across from her. "Of course, sit down." Maria was one of the few people in the new administration that Emily genuinely appreciated. Direct, efficient, and most importantly, genuinely committed to the changes Richard proposed for the clinic. "It has come to my attention that some employees are uncomfortable with your rapid rise." Maria opened the folder, revealing a series of printed emails. "There are rumors circulating about you and Dr. Sullivan." Emily felt her face heat up. "What kind of rumors?" "The predictable kind when a former receptionist who was fired returns as a department coordinator after suing the company." Maria sighed. "Some suggest that you have a personal relationship. Others, that you have some kind of compromising information about him." Emily closed her eyes for a moment, controlling her irritation. "That's absurd." "I know, but rumors have power, especially in a transitioning environment like ours." Maria paused. "There has been resistance to the changes you proposed. Subtle sabotage, information forgotten, documents that disappear." Emily wasn't surprised. In the past few weeks, she had encountered obstacles in almost every initiative she tried to implement. Small details that complicated her work, incorrect data, altered schedules, delayed reports. "I suspected something like this, but why tell me now?" Maria placed an envelope on the desk. "Because this arrived at my department early this morning. A dossier about you, anonymous. Details of your personal life, finances, even records of your mother's visits to the clinic before the incidents." Emily picked up the envelope with trembling hands. "This is an invasion of privacy. It's harassment. It's also a sign that someone is very uncomfortable with your presence here. Someone with access to privileged information." Maria observed her with concern. "You should show this to Dr. Sullivan." Emily shook her head. "No, at least, not yet. If I do that, they'll say I'm running to him at the first sign of trouble, confirming the rumors. Emily, this isn't just corridor gossip. It's a coordinated attempt to undermine your authority and maybe even force you out." Emily put the envelope in the drawer. "Who delivered this to you?" "It was left in my mailbox. No sender, no fingerprints, I imagine." After Maria left, Emily remained motionless, looking out the window. The feeling of being watched that she had after the meeting with Richard hadn't diminished in the past few weeks. Several times she caught curious glances, conversations that ceased when she approached, anonymous messages on her computer. Her phone rang, interrupting her thoughts. "Emily Matthews." "Emily, it's Richard. Could you come to my office? We have a situation that needs your attention." Something in his tone of voice alerted her. "Now?" "Yes, please. It's about your mother." Emily felt a chill run down her spine. Martha had started a new treatment at the clinic 2 weeks ago, under direct supervision of the team chosen by Richard. Until now, everything had gone well. "I'm on my way." In the elevator to the 10th floor, Emily tried to control her anxiety. What could have happened? Had her mother had a relapse? Had the new medications caused some reaction? Richard's secretary immediately escorted her to his office. Upon entering, Emily realized they weren't alone. A man in a dark suit with a formal posture was seated in front of Richard's desk. Next to him, a woman of approximately 50 was taking notes on a tablet. "Emily, thank you for coming so quickly." Richard stood to receive her. "This is Dr. Paul Morgan from the Regional Medical Board and Dr. Lucy Carter, our new medical director." Emily greeted the two with a nod, her apprehension growing. "What happened to my mother?" Richard indicated a chair. "Your mother is fine, Emily. In fact, the new tests show a significant improvement since we started the correct treatment." Emily felt momentary relief. "Then what's the situation?" Dr. Paul adjusted his glasses, looking directly at Emily. "Ms. Matthews, we are conducting a formal investigation into the incidents that occurred with your mother under the previous administration. We found Concerning irregularities. What kind of irregularities? Lucy intervened. The errors in your mother's medication weren't accidental, Emily. They were systematically documented incorrectly to cover up a larger failure in the clinic's protocols. What are you saying? Emily looked from one face to another, trying to process the information. Richard sighed deeply. We discovered that at least 17 patients, including your mother, received incorrect dosages of the same medication over a 3-month period. The previous administration was aware but chose to treat each case as an isolated incident to avoid a regulatory investigation. Emily felt as if the floor was opening beneath her feet. 17 patients? And what happened to them? A heavy silence filled the room before Richard answered. Most had complications similar to your mother's. 3 had to be hospitalized. He paused. We are contacting each family individually to inform them about the situation and offer appropriate treatment. Why didn't you tell me about this before? Emily asked, her voice trembling with emotion. We needed to be certain, Emily. We didn't want to create panic or make accusations without concrete evidence. Dr. Paul cleared his throat. Ms. Matthews, your complaint was what initiated this investigation. If you hadn't persisted, even after dismissal, this pattern might have continued indefinitely. Emily felt a mixture of vindication and horror. Her intuition had always told her that what happened to her mother wasn't a simple error, but the scale of the negligence was greater than she had ever imagined. What happens now? Richard exchanged a look with Dr. Paul before answering. The Regional Medical Board is conducting a formal investigation. Internally, we have already removed all those involved in the cover-up, and we are immediately implementing the new protocols that you developed. Lucy smiled gently. Actually, Emily, we wanted your approval to name the new medication verification system the Martha Protocol, in honor of your mother and your persistence in seeking the truth. Emily blinked, surprised by the proposal. I don't know what to say. Say yes, Richard suggested with a smile. Your mother would be proud. After the meeting, Emily returned to her office in a state of shock. 17 patients, 17 families who could have gone through the same despair as her. The idea was nauseating. As she organized her thoughts, she noticed an envelope that wasn't there before, apparently slipped under her door. Inside, she found a photo, her and Richard talking at the cafe across from the clinic, where they had casually lunched the week before. On the back, a handwritten message. Personal relationships influence professional decisions. The board will be informed. Emily sat down heavily, the photo trembling in her hands. It was clear now. Someone within the clinic was determined to undermine not only her position, but also the changes Richard was trying to implement. Someone who probably had connections to the previous administration, someone who might have been involved in covering up the medical errors. Her phone rang again. Unknown number. Hello? Emily Matthews. A male voice, unknown. Yes. Who is this? My name is Robert Adams. I'm a journalist with Health Daily. I'd like to talk about the recent transformations at Hope Medical Center and about your relationship with the new CEO, Richard Sullivan. Emily felt her stomach sink. How did you get my number? An internal source very concerned about the direction of the clinic. There was a pause. I have information about irregularities in your hiring, Ms. Matthews, and about how the lawsuit against the clinic was suddenly archived after your promotion. That's not true, Emily replied, struggling to keep her voice steady. The lawsuit was not archived. It's ongoing with full transparency. That's not what my source indicates. I'd like to hear your side of the story before publishing. Emily took a deep breath. Mr. Adams, I suggest you check your sources better, and if you want an official interview, contact our communications department. She hung up the phone, her hands shaking. The situation was escalating quickly, from corridor rumors to anonymous dossiers, and now the press. Who was behind this, and how far would they go to discredit her? Emily looked at the drawer where she had stored the envelope delivered by Maria. She hesitated for a moment, then made her decision. It was time to confront Richard with everything that was happening, not because she needed protection, but because they were clearly both under attack and needed to face this together. If this story interested you, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and give a like. Tell us what city you're watching from. We'll continue. Richard received Emily at his home that night away from the eyes and ears of the clinic. The residence, located in a tree-lined complex in the Laurelhurst neighborhood, was spacious but surprisingly welcoming, with wooden furniture, books stacked on shelves up to the ceiling, and Lily's toys discreetly scattered around the corners. "Sorry to receive you like this without notice," Richard said, serving tea in large ceramic mugs in the integrated kitchen. "But after what you told me on the phone, I thought it better we talk in a safe environment." Emily nodded, accepting the hot mug. "Where's Lily?" "At my sister's house. I thought it better she spend the night there, considering the matters we need to discuss." Richard sat across from her at the kitchen counter. "So show me everything." Emily opened her folder, spreading out the documents, photos, and anonymous messages she had received in the past few weeks. "Someone is systematically building a narrative against both of us, Richard, against the changes we're implementing at the clinic." Richard examined the material with a grave expression, pausing at the photo of the two at the cafe. "This is harassment. I'll activate our legal department immediately." "It's not just harassment," Emily argued. "It's a coordinated strategy. Someone has access to internal information, medical records, even details about my personal and financial life. And now the press is involved." Richard frowned. "This journalist, Robert Adams, I've heard of him. He has a reputation for investigating scandals in the health area. He mentioned an internal source. Someone is feeding him distorted information about us." Richard stood up, walking around the kitchen while thinking. "The question is, who would gain from this? Who has an interest in discrediting not just you, but the entire new administration?" Emily bit her lip, hesitant. "I have some suspicions. Dr. Oliver Miller, the former medical director, was one of the most vocal against my hiring, and Catherine Andrews from the old legal team was directly involved in the process of covering up the medical errors. Both were removed during the restructuring," Richard observed, "but they maintain connections within the clinic, and they're on the board of the Regional Medical Association." Richard sat down again, rubbing his face in a sign of fatigue. "This goes beyond simple resistance to change, Emily. They're protecting themselves. If the full extent of negligence under the previous administration comes to light completely, it's not just jobs at risk. It's reputations, careers, potentially even medical licenses." Emily nodded. "And I'm the perfect target. The ex-receptionist who sued the clinic was fired and mysteriously returned in a leadership position." "We're both targets," Richard corrected. "Me, the new idealistic CEO who doesn't understand how things really work in the healthcare system. Together, we represent a threat to the status quo." Emily took a sip of tea, organizing her thoughts. "What do we do now? We can't simply ignore this." Richard reflected for a moment. "We have two options. We can back down, go slower with the changes, try not to stir the waters too much, or we can face this head-on. Total transparency. Expose everything ourselves before someone does it in a distorted way." Emily felt a chill. "Expose how?" Richard got up, walking to a painting on the living room wall. He moved it, revealing a small built-in safe. After entering the combination, he removed a folder and returned to the table. "This is what my audit team discovered in the past few weeks, the true extent of what happened under the previous administration." He opened the folder, revealing reports, graphs, and internal documents. "It wasn't just 17 patients affected by the medication error, Emily. It was more than 40 over 6 months." Emily felt her blood freeze. 40? The problem started when the clinic changed medication suppliers, seeking to reduce costs. The new medications had different dosages and presentations, but there was no adequate staff training. When the first problems arose, the decision was to cover up, not correct. Emily studied the documents, horrified. "And my mother. She was one of the last affected, shortly before you made the complaint. In fact, your persistence ended up saving many other people." Richard hesitated before continuing. "Emily, what I'm proposing is that we call a press conference. Present all the facts, assume institutional responsibility for what happened before, and detail the measures we're taking to ensure it never happens again." Emily blinked, surprised. "That would be explosive. Would the board approve?" "Probably not. That's why I'm not going to ask for approval." Richard smiled slightly. "Sometimes it's better to ask for forgiveness than permission, especially when lives are at stake. Emily reflected on the proposal, feeling the weight of the decision. If we do this, the people who are attacking us will intensify their efforts. They'll try to discredit us even more. Yes, but they'll also lose their main ammunition, secrecy. They can't threaten us with what's already in the public domain. Emily slowly agreed. And what about the insinuations about us? About a supposed personal relationship? Richard looked her directly in the eyes. The truth, Emily, we tell the truth. That we met in an unusual way, that you helped me when I needed it, without knowing who I was, and that your hiring was based on merit and your courage to do what's right even when difficult. Something in his conviction deeply touched Emily. For the first time since she had started working in the new position, she felt she was really in the right place, doing what she should be doing. When would we do this? Tomorrow, before the journalist publishes anything, based on partial or distorted information. Emily nodded. I'm with you. After finalizing the details of the plan, Richard insisted on calling a taxi for Emily, concerned about her safety. At the door, he hesitated before speaking. Emily, there's something else I need to tell you, something that might complicate the situation even more. Emily felt a knot in her stomach. What? Richard took a deep breath. I'm beginning to suspect that the old administration might have a direct financial interest in discrediting our changes. I found evidence of an overcharging scheme with the old medication supplier. If this is confirmed, we'd be dealing with something much bigger than wounded pride or reputation protection, Emily completed, understanding the gravity. Exactly. All the more reason to act quickly. The taxi arrived, interrupting the conversation. Emily entered the vehicle with her head spinning with information and concerns. Looking out the window as they drove away, she saw Richard standing at the door, a solitary figure carrying an enormous weight on his shoulders. The next morning, Emily arrived at the clinic earlier than usual. The building was still quiet, with only the cleaning crew and some night shift nurses present. She headed directly to her office to prepare the documents she would present at the press conference. Upon opening the door, however, she froze in place. Her office was completely ransacked. Drawers open, papers scattered, computer on. Someone had clearly searched for something urgently, and without concern for disguising the invasion. Emily slowly backed away, her heart racing. Her first instinct was to call Richard, but before she could get her phone, a voice surprised her. Looking for this, Emily? She turned to find Catherine Andrews, the ex-legal director, standing in the hallway. In her hands was the folder Emily had left on her desk the day before, containing copies of the documents she had received anonymously. How did you get in here? Emily asked, trying to keep her voice firm. Catherine smiled coldly. I worked in this place for 15 years. I know every door, every security measure, every routine. She waved the folder. Interesting documents. It seems someone doesn't appreciate your special relationship with the new CEO. Emily took a step forward. Return my folder, Catherine, and leave before I call security. Security? Catherine laughed. Who do you think let me in, dear? Not everyone here is enchanted with Richard Sullivan's idealistic new administration. Many prefer the old way of doing things, more practical, more profitable. Emily kept her calm, studying her options. The hallway was deserted, her phone in her coat pocket. She needed to buy time. What do you want, Catherine? Because clearly you're not here just to intimidate me. Catherine took a step forward. I want you and Richard to reconsider this absurd idea of total transparency. Some matters are better kept internal, for the good of the institution. Emily frowned. Like the 40 patients who received incorrect medication, like the overcharging scheme with the supplier. Catherine's expression hardened. I see Richard has already shared his conspiracy theories with you. Pathetic. She threw the folder on a nearby chair. Emily, be reasonable. You're too intelligent to be just a pawn in Richard's game. He's using you, your story, your mother, your supposed integrity, to advance his own agenda. And what would that agenda be? Power, control, the same thing everyone wants. Catherine shrugged. He's no different from the others, just more skilled at hiding his true intentions. Emily kept her gaze fixed on Catherine. Is that what you're doing here? Trying to turn me against Richard? I'm offering a way out. Catherine lowered her voice. The board is meeting right now. Richard doesn't know, but they're discussing his continuation in the position. If the press conference happens, if these documents go public, it won't just be the clinic's reputation at stake. It will be jobs, careers, lives. Lives are already at stake, Catherine. Patients' lives. Catherine sighed, as if speaking to a stubborn child. There will always be risks in medicine, Emily. There will always be errors. The question is how we handle them, exposing everything to public scrutiny, causing unnecessary panic, or managing internally, protecting the institution that, after all, exists to save lives? Emily picked up her folder, facing Catherine directly. You really believe that, don't you? That the end justifies the means? In the real world, it always does. Catherine checked her watch. You have 1 hour to convince Richard to cancel the press conference. Otherwise, that article the journalist is preparing about you two will be just the beginning of the problems. With that, Catherine turned on her heels and left, leaving Emily alone in the hallway, the folder firm in her hands and a crucial decision to make. Emily ran through the clinic's corridors, her heart beating hard against her chest. She needed to find Richard before it was too late. Catherine's words echoed in her mind. The board secretly meeting, deciding his fate without his knowledge. Was it true, or just another manipulation? As she turned into the hallway leading to the director's office, she almost collided with Maria Foster. Emily, I was looking for you. The HR director seemed agitated. Something strange is happening. The board called an emergency meeting, without notifying Richard. So it was true. Where is he now? In the 9th floor conference room, preparing the presentation for the press conference. He asked not to be disturbed. Emily pressed the folder against her chest. I need to see him immediately. It's urgent. Maria nodded, concerned. Go. I'll try to find out more about this board meeting. Emily headed for the elevator, trying to organize her thoughts. What should she do? Alert Richard about Catherine's threat? Tell him about the invasion of her office? Or worse, convey the doubt that the ex-legal director had tried to plant, that Richard might be using her for his own purposes. When the elevator doors opened on the 9th floor, Emily was surprised by an unexpected sight. Lily, sitting in a chair in the hallway, drawing intently in her notebook. Lily, what are you doing here? The girl looked up, smiling as she recognized Emily. Daddy said I could come with him today. Aunt Christine was supposed to pick me up at lunch, but she's late. Emily sat down next to her. Is your father in the conference room? Lily nodded. He's working on something important. He said I can't go in until he's finished. She showed the drawing she was making, a colorful version of Hope Medical Center with smiling people around it. It's for his presentation. He said he's going to talk about how to make the hospital better. Emily smiled, despite the tension. It's beautiful, Lily. She hesitated before asking, what did your father tell you about today, about the presentation? Lily tilted her head, thoughtful. He said he's going to tell an important story to many people, about doing the right thing even when it's hard. She lowered her voice to a whisper. And he said you're the bravest person he knows. Emily felt a warmth rise up her neck. He said that? Lily nodded vigorously. He said you helped us when no one else would, and that now you're going to help a lot of other people together. At that moment, the conference room door opened, and Richard appeared. He seemed surprised to see Emily. Emily, I wasn't expecting you so early. We need to talk, she said, standing up. It's urgent. Richard noticed the seriousness in her tone. He knelt in front of Lily. Princess, can you continue your drawing for a few more minutes? I promise I won't be long. Lily agreed, returning to her artistic work. Richard led Emily into the conference room, closing the door behind them. What happened? Emily took a deep breath before reporting everything. The invasion of her office, the confrontation with Catherine, the threats, the secret board meeting. As she spoke, she carefully observed Richard's reactions, looking for any sign that Catherine might be right about his true intentions. But all she saw was genuine concern, followed by determination. This changes things, Richard finally said, running his hand through his hair. If the board is meeting without my knowledge, it means the leak was bigger than we thought. Someone told them about the press conference. Catherine gave me an hour to convince you to cancel everything. Richard frowned. And what did you decide? Do you think we should back down? The question caught Emily by surprise. You're consulting me? Of course. We're in this together, Emily. From the beginning. He hesitated before continuing. "But I need you to trust me completely. Catherine tried to put doubts in your mind, didn't she? Insinuate that I have hidden motives, that I'm using you somehow." Emily nodded slowly. "How did you know?" "Because it's the obvious strategy. Divide and conquer." Richard came closer, looking her in the eyes. "Emily, when we met on that rainy night, it was pure coincidence. I didn't know who you were, nor did you know who I was. It was just humanity in its purest state. You helped two strangers without expecting anything in return." He paused, carefully choosing his next words. "When I discovered who you were, I was stunned by the coincidence. But the more I learned about what had happened, to you, to your mother, to so many other patients, the more I realized that perhaps that encounter wasn't so random after all." "What do you mean?" Richard smiled slightly. "I'm not particularly religious, Emily, but I believe that sometimes the universe puts the right people in our path at the exact moment. You showed compassion when you had no obligation to. You showed integrity when it would have been easier to remain silent. These are exactly the qualities this clinic needed, that I needed, to make real change happen." Emily felt her resolution strengthen. Richard's words resonated with truth, dispelling the doubts that Catherine had tried to plant. "We're not cancelling the press conference," she decided, "but we need to be prepared for the consequences. If the board really is meeting to remove you." Richard nodded. "Then we'll face that too, together." Richard's phone rang, interrupting the moment. He answered, listened for a few seconds, and his face paled. "I understand. I'll be there in 5 minutes." He hung up, turning to Emily. "That was Maria. The board is demanding my presence immediately. Apparently they received some kind of compromising documentation and are considering a vote of no confidence." Emily felt a chill. "I'll go with you." Richard shook his head. "No. They summoned only me. If you appear together, it will only confirm suspicions about our proximity." He walked to the table, collecting some documents. "Besides, someone needs to continue the preparations for the press conference. It will happen regardless of the board's decision." "And Lily?" Richard hesitated, concern crossing his face. "Can you stay with her until my sister arrives? I don't want her to notice something is wrong." Emily nodded. "Of course. We'll resolve this, Richard." He smiled, briefly squeezing her hand. "We will." After Richard's departure, Emily returned to the hallway where Lily continued drawing, oblivious to the storm forming around her. She sat down next to the girl, trying to disguise her concern. "Your father had to resolve an important matter. He asked me to stay with you until your aunt arrives." Lily looked up from her drawing. "He seemed worried." "Adult work," Emily tried to smile. "Always full of complications." Lily studied Emily's face with that sharp perception that only children possess. "You're worried too." Emily hesitated before answering honestly. "Yes, I am. But we'll resolve everything. Your father is very brave and intelligent." "Like on the rainy night?" Emily looked at the girl in surprise. "You remember that night?" Lily nodded. "I remember I was very cold and scared. Daddy and I had missed the last bus after the car broke down. No one would stop to help." She smiled, remembering. "Then you came and took us to your house. It smelled like cinnamon and books." Emily smiled at the description. "And you made that beautiful drawing for me." "The green heart drawing?" Lily exclaimed, excited. "Daddy loved it so much that he used it in the clinic's campaign. He said it represents what you two want to do here. Care for people with heart." At that moment, an idea began to form in Emily's mind. The drawing, the green heart, the symbol that now represented the New Hope Medical Center throughout the city. "Lily, would you mind if we used your drawing once more? For something very important." The girl smiled. "Of course not. For what?" "To tell a story. A true story." 2 hours later, the Hope Medical Center auditorium was packed. Journalists, doctors, nurses, administrative staff, all waited anxiously for the start of the hastily announced press conference. On stage, a screen displayed only the clinic's new logo, the green heart drawn by Lily. Backstage, Emily waited, nervously. Richard had still not returned from the meeting with the board, and time was running out. Maria approached, bringing news. "The board is divided. Half want to remove Richard immediately, citing inappropriate conduct and dangerous unilateral decisions. The other half argue that he deserves a chance to explain himself. And Richard. He's defending himself with everything. He presented documents, evidence, testimonies. But... Maria hesitated. But? They're using you against him, Emily, suggesting that your hiring was motivated by personal interest, not professional, that your mother's case was unduly influenced. Emily took a deep breath, trying to control her anger. That's why we need this press conference, to make everything clear once and for all. Maria checked the clock. It's time. We can't delay anymore. The journalists will start leaving if we wait. Emily felt panic growing. But Richard should be leading this. That was the plan from the beginning. Plans change, Maria said gently. You know the material, you know the story better than anyone. And more importantly, you lived this, Emily. Maybe it was always you who should tell this story. Emily looked at the auditorium through the curtain. Expectant faces, cameras ready, microphones on. Among the audience, she noticed Catherine and other members of the old administration, observing with expressions of triumphant anticipation. They thought they had won. I'll do it, Emily decided. We start in 5 minutes. As she prepared, Emily felt her phone vibrate. A message from Richard. Still with the board. Trust you. Tell our story. With renewed determination, Emily adjusted the lapel microphone and walked onto the stage. The murmur gradually diminished as she took position behind the podium. Good morning, everyone. My name is Emily Matthews, Patient Experience Coordinator at Hope Medical Center. Dr. Richard Sullivan regrets not being able to be present at this moment, as he is in a meeting with the administrative board. She paused, observing the reactions. But perhaps it's appropriate that I begin this conversation, as the story we're going to share today began with me and my mother. Emily then told everything: the medical negligence suffered by her mother, her complaint, the unjust dismissal, the unexpected encounter with Richard and Lily on a rainy night. Without knowing who they were, she described how that simple gesture of humanity had, unexpectedly, connected their trajectories. What we've discovered in the past few weeks goes beyond individual errors or isolated failures, she continued, projecting documents and statistics on the screen. We identified a systematic pattern of negligence that affected dozens of patients. We're not here to point fingers, but to assume institutional responsibility and ensure these errors never happen again. With each revelation, the auditorium reacted with growing murmurs. Catherine and her allies seemed increasingly uncomfortable, exchanging worried glances. The symbol you see projected, this green heart, was drawn by an 8-year-old child on the night I welcomed 2 strangers into my home. It represents what we believe should be the true heart of medicine: compassion, genuine care, humanity. Values that unfortunately were forgotten amid spreadsheets, targets, and attempts to avoid responsibilities. Emily paused, looking directly to where Catherine was seated. Some suggested that we should keep these problems internal, that exposing the truth would harm the clinic's reputation. We profoundly disagree. We believe that true trust can only be built on transparency and responsibility. At that moment, the doors at the back of the auditorium opened. Richard entered, walking determinedly down the central aisle. All eyes turned to him, including Emily's, who felt a wave of relief. I apologize for the delay, Richard said, as he climbed onto the stage. Thank you, Emily, for starting this much-needed conversation. Emily took a step to the side, ready to yield the podium, but Richard gestured for her to remain. Please continue. This story is yours too. Together they completed the presentation, detailing the changes already implemented and those still to come. New safety protocols, rigorous staff training, direct communication channels with patients and families, and, most importantly, the new Martha protocol for medication verification. When they opened for questions, the first came from Robert Adams, the journalist who had contacted Emily. Dr. Sullivan, did the administrative board approve this press conference and the revelations made here today? Richard smiled slightly. The board was informed, but not consulted about the specific content. I believe true leadership sometimes requires making difficult decisions even when unpopular. And what about the allegations that your personal relationship with Ms. Matthews influenced administrative decisions? Emily felt her face heat up, but Richard responded with impressive calm. If by personal relationship you mean the fact that Emily helped me when I needed it, without knowing who I was, yes, That certainly influenced my perception of her character and integrity. If the question insinuates something more, the answer is no. Emily was hired for her merit, her experience as a patient and family member of a patient, and her courage in standing up for what's right, even when personally costly. Another journalist raised her hand. "Dr. Sullivan, you mentioned that you were temporarily removed today by the board. Does this mean you are no longer CEO of Hope Medical Center?" A murmur ran through the auditorium. Emily looked at Richard, surprised. He hadn't mentioned this. "The board voted for my temporary removal while they investigate allegations raised by members of the old administration," Richard confirmed. "I respect their decision, although I disagree with it. This press conference was scheduled before that vote, and I decided to maintain it because I believe transparency is more important than positions or titles." Emily felt a wave of admiration and something more that she couldn't name. Richard's courage to move forward even after being removed spoke volumes about his commitment to real change. The questions continued for more than an hour. Gradually, the tone shifted from suspicious to investigative, and finally to something close to respect. At the end, when the last journalist left the auditorium, Richard and Emily remained on stage, exhausted, but with the feeling that something important had been achieved. "The board really removed you?" Emily finally asked when they were alone. Richard nodded, temporarily. "For 2 weeks, while they conduct an independent investigation." "I'm sorry, don't be. It was expected." He smiled. "Actually, I thought it would be worse. Half the board is still on our side, Emily, and after this press conference, public opinion will be too. It will be very difficult for them to go back now that the truth is exposed." Emily frowned. "And if they don't reinstate you? Then I'll continue fighting from another position. The important thing is that change happens, not who gets credit for it." Richard looked at the green heart symbol still projected on the screen. "Some ideas are bigger than the people who initiate them." 3 months later, Hope Medical Center was a transformed place. Richard had been reinstated as CEO after the independent investigation confirmed all his allegations about the previous administration. Catherine and several other executives faced processes for administrative misconduct and potentially criminal behavior. The Martha Protocol had been successfully implemented, reducing medication errors to practically zero. Emily now led a team dedicated to improving patient experience in all aspects, from initial care to post-treatment follow-up. On a spring afternoon, Emily met Richard in the clinic's cafeteria, a routine they had established to discuss projects and share ideas. "The Department of Health wants to learn about our protocol," Richard commented, showing an email on his tablet. "They're considering implementing it in public hospitals across the country." Emily smiled, genuinely pleased. "That means other people won't go through what my mother went through. Speaking of which, how is she?" "Better every day. The new medications are working. Yesterday she beat me at the memory game we usually play." Richard laughed. "Martha is a force of nature, like her daughter." Emily felt her face heat up slightly. In the past few months, her relationship with Richard had evolved beyond the professional. Nothing declared or official. Both were too cautious for that, especially considering the circumstances, but there was something growing between them. Something that had begun on that rainy night and strengthened through the storms they faced together. "Lily asked if we can go to the park on Sunday," Emily commented, changing the subject. "Said she wants to show her new drawings." "She loves spending time with you." Richard paused. "We both do." Emily smiled, allowing herself to enjoy that moment of peace. She knew there was still much work ahead, many battles to be fought. The healthcare system wouldn't change overnight. Resistance would arise, obstacles would appear. But something fundamental had changed. Not just at Hope Medical Center, but in Emily and Richard. The experience had transformed them, strengthened them. It showed that simple gestures of humanity, like opening the door to a stranger on a cold night, could trigger waves of change that reached far beyond two people. And at the center of it all was that simple symbol created by a child, the green heart, that now represented not just a renewed clinic, but a commitment to compassion, integrity, and the courage to do what's right, even when difficult. Emily looked out the cafeteria window, observing the movement of the city outside. Somewhere at that exact moment, someone was facing their own storm, needing help, a gesture of kindness that could change everything. and perhaps inspired by the story now circulating about Emily and Richard, that person would find the courage to extend a hand. Because in the end, that's what it was about. Not just medical protocols or institutional reforms, but reconnecting with what makes medicine and life truly meaningful, the human capacity to genuinely care for each other.